just wanted to say thank you so much for having us. Thank you to all the organizers and the programmers and everyone who worked to bring us to the festival. It's such an honor to get to share these stories about Mauna Kea and about the Kia'i protectors who are guardians of the mountain with you all, and excited to answer any questions you all might have too. My approach to representing the struggle to protect Mauna Kea was always focused on mothers and daughters and yeah, intergenerational healing and trauma, but really wanting that vahine or that female perspective to be documented. And I was raised with an activist mom myself who would take me to protests and like city council meetings and other meetings like that. So something that, I thought was very just normal. And then I think as I got older, I realized how unique that experience was, and that's not something that everyone is exposed to. So I really wanted to be able to document the Vahine or the women's side of a movement in real time. And so, yeah, my approach to Standing Above the Clouds was always wanting it to be about the women and about documenting and depicting feminized version of what power looks like, and that, power isn't always what we see with like the police and with weapons and with that um, kind of more like masculine and state controlled power, but it's also in singing together, in praying together, and in like the community that we can build together. Yeah, it is really, delicate topics to even just to talk about, but then to think about putting out into the world. It's even more layers of sensitivity and just care that's needed to make sure that things are being done right and people feel like they're being accurately represented. So we had a really collaborative approach with the families that are in the film. And kind of from the very beginning, like we made a short film as well. And so we could kind of understand in our relationship to each other, what is it like when we release something into the world and this process of making something. And then this project we've worked on for about 6 years, a little over 6 years now. So it's been, a really long process of, just building trust and building community with each other and building our bonds. And I think that's why we're able to approach different issues and things that are hard to talk about, but we have trust with ourselves and with each other as a team to know that it will be handled with care and that everyone will have a chance to, say how they feel about how they're being portrayed before it's released into the world. And that's a part of documentary filmmaking that I am really passionate about. And I see myself and my colleagues and collaborators as part of this new wave of documentary filmmaking, where we want to make sure that the people in the film have agency in the story that's being told, and feel like, they're being accurately represented and that it can be something that's collaborative and full of consent. Um, and I think for me personally, the Mauna is such a healing place. Mauna Kea is so sacred and so healing. So just being able to spend so much time with the Mauna and being able to, sit at the feet of these incredible women leaders and film with them inside their van on the front line or in their tent. It's just been like the honor and privilege of my lifetime. And for so long, we've talked about, what it was going to be like when the film is finished and when we could share it with the world. And so to now be at that stage where we're getting to share the film with the world and share about Mauna Kea and the Kia'i that protect her, it's very, yeah, special and meaningful. Well, my auntie lives on the Big Island where the film takes place, and I'm actually at her house right now. And she she first kind of sent me, I think it was a news article about Auntie Pua, who's the main person in the film, and her daughter Havane. And I remember just seeing them talking about the mountain just side by side, so strong as mother and daughter. And I just felt so inspired and like, whoa, this is something that I want more people to be able to see And I think because I was raised by an activist mom, like I know how beautiful it is and also how challenging it can be to have these like overlapping roles and positions. And then our like longtime family friends in Hawaii introduced me to Auntie Pua and her ohana, and they're actually distant cousins of hers. So that's how we first started working together. And then I kind of brought her this idea of, making a film about mothers and daughters and about all the things that people don't get to see and people don't understand. And kind of, when the front line happens, there's a lot of press and a lot of, kind of things, especially you're under arrest or things like that. But like what happens when all those cameras go away and when all the news leaves and in the in between times of movement building and movement sustaining. And she was like, that's a great idea, but it can't just be about my family. It needs to be about other families in the movement too. So we worked together from the very beginning to figure out who else would be in the film and how to work together to tell this story. There was a bunch of flags that people brought for the front from for and to the front line because many different nations were showing their solidarity with the movement to protect Mauna Kea. And when they were up in 2019 on the base of the mountain, making sure that construction trucks couldn't reach the summit to start construction, there was anywhere from 70 to 7,000 people that would come on any given day. So many people brought their flags, and many people also brought hokupu or like gifts or offerings to give to the kupuna that were seated in the roadway and to the protectors in general as like an offering and a show of solidarity. There are so many films that we took inspiration from. A kind of more recent film is called The Territory, and it's distributed by National Geographic, but it's about similar land rights struggles that are happening in Brazil, in the Amazon. And so we took a lot of inspiration from that film and how they kind of really immerse you in the movement. And yeah, there's been so many really incredible films about movements and about these big encampments and big protest movements that have happened in the past few years. And yeah, we hope that more continue to be made so that people can have access to our history. And yeah, the film Warrior Women was another one that we took inspiration from. And there's a film that's actually just coming out now called Yinta, which is about the Wet'suwet'en movement. And I believe they just got acquired by Netflix. But that's another one that it's really great to kind of be playing the same festivals with and to kind of be kind of part of like a same class of films that are being made. And I hope more people have the opportunity to um, make films kind of from the inside of movements or really showing like the very like emotional and inhuman side to what it means to movement build. Thank you. Yeah, so there's 13 existing telescopes on the mountain. Some of them actually are in the process of being decommissioned. I believe one or two is in the process of being decommissioned, so they're not functional anymore. But they're owned by a variety of different organizations. Like one is a Keck telescope, that's up there, and some of them are with different universities as well. So I think they all have different functions depending on what exactly the telescope is. There's also satellites and other things up there. Because the mountain summit is at 14,000 feet and the cloud line is below the summit, thus the name standing above the clouds. But because of that, it makes very favorable conditions for stargazing and for astronomy, because if there's clouds, then you can't see the stars. So all the existing telescopes that are in use are being used um, to monitor the stars and other research purposes. And then this one would be many degrees larger than all of the existing telescopes. I think the biggest one currently is 5 to 8 meters, and this is 30 meters and 18 stories would be the building. And the building height on the rest of the island is 7 stories. So just to put in perspective, it would be like the biggest building by double on the highest peak, and also at a very sacred and fragile ecosystem. Something that came up, as we were making this film was the idea of scientific imperialism, and that, just because something is new or is, labeled as like green energy or something that's in the service of progress, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily, operating on a different level of consciousness than colonial expansion. And so I think as we desperately need solutions to our climate crisis, it's a really important thing to keep in mind to be in the right relationship with the indigenous communities that are the longtime stewards of the land that we all inhabit, to make sure that the solutions that we're talking about are actually long-lasting solutions and aren't just, short-term things that might end up polluting the environment even more. And I think, we tried to touch on it a little bit with like the montage of some of the previous things that have happened on Hawaii by the military and by developers, but there has been instances such as the bombing of Kaho'olawe by the US military, where, the military cracked the water table and now no one can live there and it's uninhabitable. And a lot of times we see with the military or with big developers, they'll pollute a space and then just kind of leave. And it's up to the people that have always lived there to clean it up. And that we know how to pollute stuff, but we don't yet know exactly how to detoxify or how to unpollute things. Um, as easily. So I think as we are on, as we continue on this path towards modernization, I think really listening to tribes and other, elders that have this kind of wisdom carried down through generations is so important to make sure that we're uh, enacting and supporting solutions that will lead to the long-term change that we all want and need. In terms of ways that people can support the movement, there's an Instagram page, Protect Mauna Kea, and there's a change.org petition that it would be great for everyone here to sign, which is to push for stopping of the telescope. And then in terms of a global indigenous movement, Auntie Pua, the main activist in the film, and others in the film have been really involved with I Don't Know More, which is, the global movement to mobilize Indigenous and First Nation communities. And we're also really excited to be looking toward next year and doing more of an impact tour. So reaching out to frontline communities and other Indigenous communities and going to reservations to make sure that we can bring the film there and then also hold like healing workshops um, alongside the film. And that's something that we're really looking forward to. And if you're interested in hosting the film with your community or school or group, you can go to our page, which is Standing Above the Clouds, and request a screening. The link should be in our link tree on Instagram, and our website is also Standing Above the Clouds. We're still very much in the swing of things, like showing the film and having so many beautiful conversations with different people around the world about how it resonates with the movements that they're working on. And I feel like it's really made me think about hope. And, in this time where so much is happening in our world and things can feel very hopeless at times, I think, kind of being able to go back to the Mauna with the film and think about everything that I learned being on the front line, um, kind of reminds me like why hope is so important and can give me some hope when I need it. But I'm looking forward to working on, more projects that are about powerful women and movement building. Um, and how to make sure that our like progressive and radical history is something that everyone who wants to have access to it has access to.